Hey there, Yuris here, and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the amazing humans from the community world about their life journeys and learn from each other. Today we have a conversation with Ashwin Chacko, a positively playful visual storyteller who, as an Indian, is a very community-driven and multicultural person, a father of three, and a children's books author whose mission is to champion creativity and empower people to find their inner spark. So, hello, Ashwin.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
It's another conversation. It's a different conversation, but a second conversation on the podcast for us. And I wanted to ask you this question first time. How did you get your Wako Chaco nickname?
Right. That's a funny story. I grew up in the 90s and I grew up at an international boarding school called Woodstock. It's at the foothills of the Himalayas. And because it's an international school, we had at least 50 different nationalities from all over the world. So it was a real melting pot. Myself came from a missionary family, so we were out in the village and stuff, and then suddenly I was inserted into this multicultural school. And since I was a 90s kid, everybody was into hip hop and rap. And so I started, stealing my dad's t-shirts because they were nice and baggy and wearing a bandana so I could look like Tupac. All this to say, I was trying to fit in. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be a part of this new school. I wanted to be a part of this community. And so that's how I continued trying to impress the cool kids, as it were. Um, but failing miserably because I wasn't myself. So even though I was a kid who loved rock and roll and funky clothes, I restricted how I looked and how I acted to what was expected of me. It wasn't until I had the opportunity to go on exchange to Australia for a school year that finally I was leaving this bubble that was my school, this little
Yeah.
insular community, and I was now exposed to the big world. And when that happened, this was a nexus moment, a crossroads in the chapter of my life because I realized, okay, I can continue to try and be somebody I'm not, uh, but the reality is the world is so big and nobody really cares about you that way, you know? So you have a choice. You can continue to keep faking how you are or embrace your weird self and just be you. And so when I came back from exchange and went back to school, I came back wearing like really funky, quirky clothes, hats, and waistcoats and stuff like that. And so people start calling me Wacko Chaco because of my style. Uh, so much so that I got into the 11th grade uh, yearbook as the most fashionable student in my grade. All this to say that that name sort of stuck. I felt like it summed up my personality well, and so when it came to setting up my own studio, felt like Wacko Chaco was appropriate because Chaco is my last name, and of course, Wacko is what they called me. So
And I feel like sometimes nicknames are meant to kind of make people sad, but it doesn't look like that. But right now, I
yeah,
wonder,
yeah.
did it make you sad in the beginning when you first heard it?
Not this specific nickname because I had already come out of that space of like realizing it doesn't matter what other people think as long as I'm happy with who I am.
Wow.
And so I leaned into that rather than pushing it away. And it's like, yeah, I am wacko, and I'm totally okay with that, you know. Versus prior to that experience, that crossroad in my life, I probably would have taken it quite hard, you know.
How else did hip hop influence your life?
Uh, well, growing up in the 90s, that was our era, so it did influence like the way some of the characters I draw. I love sneakers. I've always been into sneakers, so that pops up whether it's in my artwork or in buying my own sneakers. Um, and yeah, just in general, fashion.
So I wonder, is this dress to impress approach came from your childhood or somewhere else?
Yeah, probably. I feel like in school, every day was sort of like a fashion show, like because you're trying to impress all the different people from all over the world, different classes. And so every semester, when people went home, they came back with like new clothes, the latest stuff. I couldn't afford that stuff, so I'd get it from like a thrift store or like the fake stuff from Thailand. So yeah, but that helped me to, like lean into working with what you have rather than always having to buy the fancy brands. Like, okay, what can I do with what I have? So it allowed me to push my creativity in that way.
What is your relationship with fashion now?
I still love it. I love jackets. Jackets is my big like that's what I'm always buying, new jackets and hats. Never can go wrong with a good hat. So I think it's important, because it's a way to express yourself. It's a way to feel your best. It's a great way to make an impression, and it's a great way to push your personality out there.
How many jackets and hats do you have?
I don't know, maybe like 10 or 15 jackets and probably similar amount of hats.
How often do you change them? I mean, like, for example, right now you're wearing just one jacket and one hat. Like, do you change them every day? I don't know, twice in a day, once in a week? Like, what is this frequency for you?
Oh, it's just like one outfit per day. So like I'll figure out what sort of combination works and then that's what I'll wear. Sometimes no hat, sometimes hat. It just depends on how I'm feeling and how messy my hair is as well. So if I'm having a bad hair day, just chuck a hat on and then all's good in the world.
Let's start from the beginning. So, tell me about your parents. Who are they?
So my dad is a missionary doctor, or he used to be when I was a kid, and we went out. He was a part of an organization called EHA, which is Emmanuel Hospital Association. And for those of you who don't know, India is quite a large country, and there's great infrastructure in cities. But when it comes to rural spaces, healthcare is dismal, or it used to be, it's getting better. And so, what my dad's organization does is, or the organization my dad's part of,
Mhm.
their job was to go out and create community health first. So teach them about the basics of healthcare, boiling your water, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually they would establish a clinic and then a hospital. And then they would stock the hospitals with good doctors, um, uh, all the while, sharing the gospel as well. And so that's what inspired them to do that in the first place. So it's all interconnected in that way. So uh, we moved around a lot as a kid. So every 3 years, I think we moved different locations until my dad became the director, one of the directors of a certain amount of hospitals. And I think we were getting older as well. So that was part of his decision to like set roots in Dehradun, in the foothills of the Himalayas. It's a little valley there. Um, my mom is a nutritionist by what she studied, but she is really quite creative. Not necessarily in the drawing way, but like because we were stuck in all these rural places, she made clothes for us sometimes. She made like funky towels. Anything she wanted, she created. Like I remember her making ice cream at home one time. So she is very creative in that way. She's always creating solutions for problems that maybe we couldn't have solved being stuck in a village. You know, you don't have access to everything you have in a city. Um, so yeah, and then she was a good teacher. She taught me. We were homeschooled for until I was in first grade, and then I was going to school at the same time, and then coming home and being homeschooled because I didn't understand the language. I hadn't learned it yet, so I was just going there for the interactions with friends and things like that. Um, but yeah, so that's my mom and dad.
Do you remember the flavor of that ice cream?
I think it was a mint ice cream. It was green.
Have you ever made this ice cream again?
No, I don't think my mom has made ice cream again since then.
Wow. And you told that you were like moving around always. And also on this previous conversation that we had, you told that, and in the beginning of this conversation, that is India is very multicultural country and there are different languages within, there are different people. So how did you feel being a kid and moving to a new place?
I think as a kid, you're quite adaptable, you know? Uh, you just go with the flow. Obviously, language can be a barrier, but when you're a kid, it's not so much a barrier because you just sign, you're not thinking about it. You just communicate with other little kids and, you know, play. Play is a common narrative across any culture. So if you want to play, you go and play. You know, the games are similar as well. So yeah, it was easy enough to adapt at that stage. I think if I had it, maybe if we moved when we were older, it might have been harder. But because it was when I was very young and until the age of 8 that we were moving, that I got okay with that. In fact, you know, like that itch still continues to, uh, you know, the itch to move somewhere new. That
Wow.
bug is embedded in me now. So, uh, yeah.
Where would you like to move?
I'm actually moving to Belfast this
Hmm.
year.
Okay.
Yeah. Still
Okay.
same landmass, but a different country technically. So from Ireland to Northern Ireland.
Why are you doing that?
Um, there's several factors, you know. Number one, the lease on my house is ending. Not lease, but like, yeah, the owner is selling the house we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Two, we felt the itch for a while, so it was time for a change. Three, it's way cheaper in Northern Ireland. So since I work from home, it only makes sense that we find a place that is bigger and creates better opportunities for my kids. At the start of the year, I felt God telling me to move as well, so it was all like all
Mm.
kind of culminated together into that decision.
You've recently came back to India as a foreigner, even though you left it as a resident.
Yeah.
And how did you feel to spend Christmas with your family after being away for 8 years?
Yeah, it was like fantastic because it was um this juxtaposition of old and new. Like so much had changed about India, so much about it was different, but at the same time, it was exactly the same. You know, the relationships were the same, the culture is still the same, the place has changed. Also, my parents had just built their house, so it's really nice to enjoy that with them. You know, doing barbecues together and bonfires. So it was a lovely experience to go back and re-experience home again.
You know, it's fun. I had this question like, what changed and what remained the same since you've been in India? But you partially answered it, but
Yeah.
maybe you have something to add.
Um, yeah, like so I grew up in Dehradun and my parents have built their house there. It used to be a very quiet town, like a small town. Now it's become like prime real estate. So the area my parents built their house, it used to be like forest, nothing really much there. And now there's like construction everywhere. Like, and then like technology has evolved crazily, and they have something called payphone,
Hmm.
or phone pay, and it's like more advanced than Apple or Google Pay. It kind of like goes directly and so into people's accounts,
Hmm.
and even like the street vendor, the sabji wala, or like the vegetable guy who's pushing a cart, has that that advanced digital payment system. Uh, but at the same time, they don't accept any international cards, so I was still using cash. The first time I used cash in like I don't know how many years. So carrying stacks of cash with me. So
Oh,
it was interesting to see that juxtaposition.
it's so fun. I've never heard about that, that you can pay like do this quick payments, but only in your currency and you cannot accept like international cards. But yeah, it's so
I think they
interesting.
can. It's just they would have to like there's a huge payment that they have to make to the government, plus they
Hmm.
get a huge percent taken off the charge. And so they're like, no, you know, they just chose not to do any international card payments. So yeah.
And what changed in you during these 8 years?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I think that's a question that you have to ask like my wife or something. uh, Better to ask someone close to me, because it's hard to see the changes in yourself, because you don't realize that because it's happening in real time.
Hmm.
But I think we're always striving to be a little bit better, or I'm always striving to be a little bit better than I was yesterday and the day before. So, and then having kids as well on top of that, it teaches you a lot of lessons. You learn to be um, less precious about certain things. You learn to be more flexible, uh, still trying to be more patient. Um, so yeah, there's all of those things, and then that combined with business and everything. So constantly growing, that's all I can say.
Are you very patient?
No, I'm not the most patient person. I wish I was more patient.
Why do you create books for children?
Uh, Basically, I work in advertisement and outside of children's books, and advertisements are there one day and they're gone tomorrow, and there is nothing to be remembered by. Whereas children's books are there, they have longevity, they have legacy. They are a way for me to have a conversation with my kids, or even to speak about something that we had a conversation about that could be helpful to the larger audience of parents and children all over the world. So I think children's books as well is the first interaction we have with books as kids, and
Hmm.
that makes such an impact on our lives. And for me, I remember my dad reading me stories was so impactful. And so isn't it so much better when your dad is not only reading you the story, but has also made the story and drew the story, and some of it's inspired by your own kids, and they're part of the story. So that's why I make children's books.
What adults can learn from your books?
Oh, I think um basically they're semi for adults. Because yeah, so like for my book, for instance, my book Everybody Feels Fear, it's talking about fear, and we all face fear. The fact that you're adult or a child, it doesn't really matter. We face it in different manners, and uh part of the lesson of that book is learning to laugh at your fear and saying, it's okay to feel afraid. It's not a question of whether we feel fear or not. It's a question of what we do with the fear when we face it. And so to be brave is not to be unafraid, but to move forward even when it's scary. So that's kind of the core lesson of the book.
Have you ever had a fear of being a father?
I don't think I was afraid of being a father necessarily. I just remember the first time I held my daughter. That's my oldest child. She just been born. I held her for the first time, and then there was this like weight that was on my shoulders. I was like, I'm now responsible for this little thing. This is my responsibility. Yeah, and I was only 24 years old when my daughter was born. So it's still just like a little kid, myself. And suddenly now I have a kid that I'm responsible for as well. So I think it does, having children changes your perception. It pushes you to work harder. At least it pushed me to work harder. Um, and yeah, I think it's a real privilege to be a father because you get to make an impact on these kids' lives.
And now
Hopefully
you
for the
are,
good.
yeah, now you are a father of three.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, is anything like really changed from being a father of one daughter and like being a freezer of daughter and two sons?
I don't think so. I think it's actually easier having more kids because then they play with each other and they're
Yeah.
not as demanding with your attention. Um, were versus like a solo child. So we had them quite close together as well. So they're like the best friends and the worst enemies all at the same time. But yeah, it's yeah, I don't think there's that much of a difference.
What do you do when they are worst enemies?
Discipline is so important. So they get on timeout. They have to learn to apologize to each other, learn to work things out for themselves initially, and if that doesn't work, then discipline comes in. So it's such an important part of a child's life, teaching them the boundaries that they need to have. And then in the long run, that will teach them to be more resilient uh, and more productive members of society.
Do you apologize to your kids?
Yeah, if I'm in the wrong, I'll apologize to them.
And I'm a father of one, but
Okay.
sometimes it's so hard to understand that I am wrong. So I wonder, how do you understand that you are wrong?
My wife sometimes helps me understand I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
it works exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so fun. But I totally get what you're talking about because from time to time I'm having a conversation with my kid and he's like 12 years old and it's like almost almost an adult. It feels like it's not a kid anymore, but not an adult, like somewhere in between. And he's trying
Yeah.
to be an adult, but he don't want to be a kid anymore. And like he's trying to be on the same we almost at the same level, because like and when my wife is telling me, um I think that that you are wrong. I think that you have to act differently. I'm like, really? And then like, oh yeah, shit. So I totally get what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you love the most
Sometimes
about? Yeah, sorry, go on.
all I was saying was sometimes you need a little perspective outside of your own. Perspective is important. And if you're too close to it, sometimes you can't see it, right? You think about like perspective with cameras and your face is
Yeah,
right in it,
yeah,
you know? Now it's harder to see all the details. You can only see the details, you can't see the big picture. And then you need
yeah.
to zoom out to see how that's affecting everything around it.
And it's always good to have somebody who can help you do that.
Yeah.
So, what do you love the most about nature?
I think for me personally, nature is a reminder of the creator and being out in it just kind of reaffirms the beauty of it, and it reaffirms the fact that a creator made it and I'm a reflection of the creator, and so I am also made to create. And so that's a great reminder for me. And then there's, I think we've become so dependent on technology, we're always inside, that we kind of lose a part of ourselves where we're meant to be a part of that nature. So going out there kind of refreshes and re-earths me to who I am.
And what do you learn from nature?
There's so much to learn from nature if you observe it, to flow like a river, taking things as they go. Uh, there's seasons for everything. So perhaps the thing you want is not happening now because it's not the right season. Perhaps it's a season of planting and not of reaping. And so understanding these observations from nature and applying them to your own lives allows you to have a more holistic understanding of where you stand in the larger scale of things.
How did you feel on your hike in Himalayas?
It's just awestruck, it was so beautiful. Um, and then just being able to do that with my kids, walking through the forest, do it with my dad. It was just a lovely experience to be embedded in it and enjoy it.
What are some details that you remember, like something that you saw in nature and you were like, oh wow, it's like so exciting. Like tell me the story.
So on the highest point of Missouri, you can see the mountain, the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas.
Hmm.
We're on one side, so like Nepal's on the right side, and India's on the left side. And on the top half, that's where Missouri is. So we can see one side of the mountains. So just seeing that view is just like stunning, beautiful. It reminds me the scale of how small you are in comparison to the world, and that grounds you and um, keeps you moving forward, I think.
Yeah. Once you had a 3-minute fight with a bush, and when you finished it, the bush looked pretty nice, but I wonder why the bush was unhappy.
What is that, bro?
Okay, so I saw this video on your Instagram where you had this and you cut the bush and you made it like really fun and playful. Like you're
Oh yeah.
getting into this fight and your bush is like your enemy. But at the end, once again, the bush looked pretty nice, but I feel like it was unhappy. So I wonder why it was unhappy.
That was just a bit of fun on Instagram. I was experimenting with video, and my imagination was like, it's a bush. It's grown its hair long, right? I mean, leaves long, and so it was. Yeah, the fight was between me and him. I'm the barber, and that's the reluctant bush with a hairy grizzle, and I'm neatening it up. You can like compare it to when you're a kid and you're trying to grow your hair long and your mom's like, no, snip, snip, snip. You got to be neat and presentable.
How long did you want your hair to be when you were a kid?
Oh, I grew my hair like down
Okay.
to my shoulders. Yeah, it's pretty long.
And your mom allowed that.
Yeah, I mean, like I was a teenager. She was like, yeah, it's fine.
Have you ever done this after that?
Yeah, I had my hair long. What, like I shaved it off because I went to Chennai, which is a really hot. It's a it's at the south of India. It was really hot, so I was like, long hair. I can't deal with this, so I just shaved it off. Then I went back to Delhi for the rest of my university. When I was up there, it gets colder, so I was like, yeah, I can grow my hair out again. So I grew it out for a bit.
What is the difference between having a long hair and short hair for you?
Eh,
Like, except for view itself, I mean.
I don't know. It's well, it's lighter without long hair.
Okay, so
Outside of that, it's more like, you know, it's having something different. That's about it.
the moment I met you, I was really inspired by the art you do, by your pictures. And I'm still curious, how do you get this inspiration? How do you get these ideas for your pictures?
Yeah, yeah, inspiration's all around us, you know. It's a question of like for me, pictures are an externalization of an internal conversation.
Hmm.
So the picture is a way for me to visually communicate my ideas, my thoughts, my emotion at that point in time. And so they're just outward expressions of an internal dialogue.
How do you express bad emotions?
Make terrible art. No. So like I was bullied when I was younger and I used to bottle up my feelings and eventually they would lead to an explosion. The fuse would go off and something small would cause me to erupt. Um, and I can't remember who told me, maybe it was my mom or dad, just told me to like write down how I'm
Mm.
feeling. And so I use a journal and I express myself through that, whether it's in poetic language or whatever. When I'm writing, it's releasing that emotion. So for me, journaling has been a great way to express negative emotions and uh, let them go.
Are you still writing or are you painting now?
Both, you know, I write, I paint. It depends on the mood I'm in.
You told me about the terrible art. Like, how do you know that you made something terrible?
It's just a joke.
Ah,
It's more
okay.
like, yeah, it's just, I think there needs to be a larger separation between drawing and making art, as it were. You know, for me, drawing is just a way of how I express what I'm thinking, a way to think through an idea. Sometimes, you know, like you have so much going on in your head, you can't clarify your idea. And so for me, doodling or drawing helps me clarify the idea that's in my head. Whereas art is, I feel, a more finished expression.
How many stages or steps you go through from doodling to making art? And what are those
So,
steps?
so for me personally, once I've doodled, doodle means like you're going through several ideas, renditions, you know, you're thinking about what those ideas could be. Yeah.
Hmm.
Once you have an idea, okay, I really like this expression. This is the one I want to go for. I will then take that and I'll drop it into my iPad and then I will start you know, finishing it up so it looks nice and neat and tidy and it makes sense. That's when I start adding color and you know, finalizing the artwork. So it goes from rough sketch to then cleaned up artwork to then colored artwork, and then for me, then it's a finished piece.
How do you feel when you get some nice stuff, such as an infinitely fillable Lumos brass pen?
It's really nice, you know. It's a new way to express myself. It's a great way to you know, test a new tool in my art. So I really enjoyed playing with that pen, and it's a part of how I work now. So it's integrated with my practice, which is nice. And it's good for writing and for drawing. So
Do you
best of
have
both worlds.
do you have any favorite tool or anything that you never change that is like with you for ages?
Well, since the iPad Pro came out and Procreate, that's been with me forever. And then the classic notebook
Okay.
and, you know, pencil never gets old. You always need a pencil and you always need a notebook to draw your ideas.
Tell me about the habit of documenting your and your family's lives.
Yeah, this is something I've been trying to be more conscious of doing more recently. You think about photo albums from when you're a kid. Somebody had to take the time to do that. And so remembering to document like holidays and moments so that we can look back at those photographs and re-remember or reignite memories. That's kind of what inspired me to try and be more conscious of documenting it. I still get lost in the moment, and there is the joy of that. But it's also uh, trying to remember to document things in a way where you're trying to find that balance of, being in it, but also documenting
Where is this balance?
it. I wish I knew. I'm trying to figure that out.
I feel like I have, I don't know how many hundreds, thousands of photos. And
Yeah.
when I'm coming back, it sometimes feels so hard to, go through them because there are like, I don't know, 5 or 10 photos of one moment and like how to
Yeah.
choose the best. So I wonder, do you ever print photos?
I want to, yeah, I'm basically right now what I'm doing is collecting my favorites and putting them into folders digitally, and then once I move, maybe I will print them out, you know.
How many photos do you usually do? I mean, for example, if you see a beautiful picture, a beautiful view that you want to capture, how many clicks, how many shots do you usually do?
It really depends. If I can get it right the first time, I'm a happy chap. Maybe three or four. Yeah. I usually try to take my time to frame the shot and the idea, unless it's like an action shot, and then you can't help it. You're just like clicking and hoping you get lucky. But like when it's like nature or, something that is slightly posed, then you can take your time, work out what your composition is, and then just take it.
How do you feel about small details?
Um, I'm more of a big picture kind of guy. Yeah.
Okay, so
I think they're important, but like I'd rather see the big picture than be stuck in the details.
how do you feel about Irish weather?
uh it's can be depressing, but also really enjoyable in the summer. So I love the long summer days where, your day, like the sun is out from 5 and goes down at 11. But then the winter can be quite challenging because it's dark, gray, and gloomy. Sun's down at 4 and only up at like 8, so you get a shorter span of time. But I don't know, the rain here is different from Indian rain. It's not always very heavy. There's like sheeting and like drizzle that isn't that wet.
not,
You know,
not, not
so you're
not a
not getting
wet rain.
soaked. Whereas like in India, when it rains, it pours, and so you're soaked. Full stop. So I don't mind it when it's like a little drizzle, a light mist rain. It's kind of nice.
What do you do when you have a bad mood?
Probably write, or draw, scribble, um, go for a walk, find a way to express what is bothering me.
Do you ever talk to someone about those things, or you prefer to put it on a paper?
I think first I need to understand what is bothering me. And once I have a clearer picture of that, then I have a conversation with my wife about why it's bothering me. But I think the first step is always trying to understand what that emotion is stemming from.
what is your process of understanding? Why I'm asking? Because, there are so many things happening in my mind, in my own mind. And sometimes I feel bad, but then I kind of track it back. And that's something exactly what you've told, that some small little thing can piss you off. So, I also may become angry or something like that with one small detail, but then I understand that it's not about that. So I'm coming back. I'm trying to think about like what happened before. How did I feel about this? So I'm curious, what is your process for understanding your feelings?
So, like I said, like writing down your emotions is a big part of that, or even then sitting quietly in a room and, thinking about that process of like, why am I feeling this way? Asking yourself those questions allows you to then go through the iterative process of figuring out what the core problem to that feeling is. I say writing because it's nice to just like I'm not thinking when I'm writing. I'm just like expressing the first thoughts that come. I'm not like trying to knead it out or whatever. And then once that initial intense emotion has settled, then I can reread it and look through why that might be, or just sit back. Once my mind is quiet, then I can actually work through what has caused it, you know.
Is it hard for you to make your mind quiet?
Um, Sometimes, and sometimes it isn't. It really depends.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it depends. There are so many things out there. There are so many things going on, and so yeah, as you've told, like as the river flow, you can't describe it like it is.
yeah.
It's just it is how it is. What is your favorite game to play with your kids?
Um, Favorite. It's hard to pin down one.
You can choose
Uh,
different.
yeah. I love playing board games, like different board games with them, challenging them in that area. But then also kicking back and playing like Mario Kart or some video game. We recently got Ninja Turtles on the
Okay.
Xbox, so that's been like really fun to play with my boys. And then I always like active sports, so if I can, skateboarding is one thing I'm teaching them. We
Hmm.
love to skate together, and then hopefully, if we when we move and we're close to like a basketball court, I'd love to play more basketball with them.
Are you not afraid of teaching them skateboarding? It's a lot of falls and things here and there and
That's
stuff.
exactly why I want them to learn how to skateboard, because life is like skateboarding. You have to push to keep moving forward. Uh, in the process of the movement, you will have times when you will fall down, and it's teaching yourself to get back up and get back on the board. That is a hard lesson to learn, but if you learn it in that small, controlled environment, then you can apply it to the larger scale of your own life.
Yeah. I have this question from the previous guest. So, what is one thing that brings you pure delight in life?
Drawing.
Yeah, exactly. It was easy question. Wow.
Drawing,
Okay.
good food, company.
I can imagine like drawing in a company while having a good food. It's like combo.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Ashwin, I really wish to have the sky's the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit.
yeah.
So let's jump to the rapid fire questions.
Okay.
India or Ireland?
Ireland at the moment. Yeah.
Biking or hiking?
Oh, that's a hard one. Biking.
What are your favorite color and song?
Um, Yellow. Song. At the moment, God Is by Kanye West, has been stuck in my head. So
Who do you learn from? Name just one person.
that's a hard. Uh, my dad, I suppose. That's one person that I could start with.
Name two people who I should definitely reach out to and have this conversation with
Um, s- about work or about
about life.
about life. Um, James Martin is a really fascinating, creative, and human. I had an amazing conversation with him on my podcast, both about life and about work. They kind of intermingle between the two. Um, who's another one that I can think of? Sorry, I'm going blank at the moment.
Okay, I'll ask you later. So
Yeah,
ask it forward. It's like pay it forward, but with questions. So ask
right.
a question that a future guest will have to answer.
Can you move forward in life without purpose?
Got it. And is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
Not that I can think of. Yeah,
Okay, got it. Ashwin, I was inspired by your drawings first, before the first conversation that we had. And then I really
yeah,
loved how you explained your journey, like from being in India, then going to Ireland, and how community and people around, how they are all influence your journey and how you are moving through life because of your drawings and like all the things that you do around you. And I really wanted to get to know you better. And today you gave me just a small sneak peek a little bit inside your life.
yeah,
And yeah, I feel like I'm still having more and more and better impression about you. And I feel like I'm becoming your friend, even though we never met in person. So
yeah,
thank you very
yeah.
much for that. And
No,
thank you very much for being so, as you say, positively playful. I really love it. So yeah, thank you so much.
thanks so much for having me. It's been a really enjoyable conversation. I also thought of the other person, Diane Gibbs. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she is an amazing designer, teacher. She has the best personality ever, so funny, uh,
Wow.
so full of life. So,
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing that. And yeah, see you in the community world.